The Giant's Causeway sits on the northern coast of Northern Ireland, and it is one of the most studied natural landmarks on the face of this planet, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1986. Over 1 million visitors every single year. Families walk those black stones with their children. Guides tell the story of Finn McCool. Everyone takes their photos, everyone goes home. And for 300 years, not one person had any idea what was actually sealed inside that cliff. But before I tell you what researchers found inside rock that is 60 million years old, let me tell you about a man who had exactly one goal that evening. He just wanted a nice shot for Instagram. Ciarán Doyle is an electrician, 34 years old, lives in Dublin, spends his free time filming coastal landscapes with his consumer drone. He is not a mystery hunter. He is not tracking geological anomalies. That Tuesday evening in autumn, he had driven up from Dublin that morning specifically because the weather forecast promised clear skies and a calm sea over the Antrim coast. He wanted a panoramic clip of the cliffs against the water at sunset. He had done this exact thing 100 times before. Fly the drone out, capture a few minutes of footage, post the best frame, drive home. What his drone recorded that evening became one of the most analyzed pieces of amateur footage in recent memory. The video shows a section of the basalt cliff face moving, a slab of solid volcanic rock the size of a transit van, roughly 20 tons, slowly pushing outward like a door on a hinge. Behind it, total darkness. The movement was smooth, deliberate, almost mechanical. 11 seconds. Then, the stone returned to its original position with surgical precision. No crack, no gap, no seam. If you had looked at that cliff 1 minute later, you would never have known anything happened. Doyle almost didn't post the clip. He thought his drone had glitched, or the light was playing tricks through the lens. But he rewatched it 6 times sitting in his car, and he could see the shadow shifting behind the slab. Something was open back there. Something real. He uploaded it that night. By morning, his phone was ringing nonstop. Geologists, journalists, university researchers, all of them asking the exact same question. Was it real or was it faked? And this is where it gets interesting. One of those calls came from Dr. Sarah Brennan, a senior geologist at Queen's University Belfast, who has studied the Antrim basalt formations for over 15 years. Brennan is not someone who chases viral videos. She has published dozens of papers on volcanic rock structures across the North Atlantic. When colleagues forwarded her the clip, she nearly dismissed it outright. Then, she watched it a second time, then a third. She called Doyle directly and told him point blank, either his footage broke every known rule of geology, or it was the most sophisticated hoax she had ever seen. She drove to the site the next day to find out which one. For anyone who doesn't know, the Giant's Causeway is a stretch of northern Irish coastline made up of roughly 40,000 interlocking hexagonal basalt columns, the result of a volcanic eruption about 60 million years ago, when lava at over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit filled a valley and cooled into these eerily perfect geometric pillars. The British Geological Survey confirms these rocks formed during the opening of the North Atlantic Ocean, when the ancient continent of Laurasia began to fragment. Local legend says a giant named Finn McCool built them as a bridge to Scotland to challenge a rival. Nice story. What was actually sealed inside those cliffs is something else entirely. And here is what makes this even more unsettling. In all those centuries of study, all those geological surveys and ground scans, nobody had ever detected a single hollow space inside these cliffs. No ancient text mentioned a hidden door. No legend even hinted at one. Dr. Brennan herself had personally scanned sections of that coastline dozens of times over her career and found nothing but solid rock every single time, until Ciarán Doyle's drone caught it on camera. But what Dr. Brennan found when she pointed her radar at that cliff is something she still cannot talk about without her voice changing. And it is the reason 2 members of her initial team resigned within the first week. Dr. Brennan set up her ground-penetrating radar at the exact coordinates from Doyle's footage early the next morning. The weather was gray. The wind was cutting sideways off the Atlantic. She calibrated the sensors, aimed the antenna at the cliff, started the scan, and waited for the image to render. What came up on her screen made her stop moving. She stood there, eyes locked on the display for nearly 2 full minutes without speaking. Her field assistant later said he thought the equipment had malfunctioned because she just wasn't reacting. She wasn't writing notes. She wasn't adjusting settings. She was just staring. Here is what the radar showed. A massive hollow chamber hidden inside what every geologist on Earth had always assumed was completely solid basalt, about 12 feet deep and 26 feet wide. A room sealed behind volcanic rock with no entrance and no exit that any instrument had ever detected. That alone should have been impossible. But what the scan detected inside that that room made the chamber itself feel like a footnote. 7 tall figures standing upright in the dark. Each one measured between 7 and 8 feet in height. They were positioned in a precise formation spaced exactly 4.5 feet apart from one another, and every single one of them was facing the stone door. Not randomly arranged, not collapsed, not scattered like debris, standing in rows, facing the way out. Now here is the geological detail that makes this flatly impossible to explain. Basalt does not form around standing objects. It is not sedimentary rock that slowly builds up layer by layer over time. Basalt is cooled lava. The only way those figures could be inside that rock is if they were already in position when the lava was still liquid, still burning at over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which means they have been sealed in there since the eruption that created the Giant's Causeway 60 million years ago. Human beings would not exist for another 59.7 million years. Whatever those 7 things are, they were standing in that formation before anything resembling a person ever walked this planet. The next morning, a geophysicist named Dr. Ian Gallagher arrived from Belfast with more advanced scanning equipment. Gallagher specializes in subsurface imaging, reading what is buried beneath rock, soil, and ocean floor. He has mapped underground river systems across northern Europe and worked on deep crust surveys for the Irish government. When he started the scan that morning, he was methodical, professional, calm, the kind of calm that comes from decades of looking at underground images and never being surprised. 20 minutes later, his hands were shaking so badly he had to set his tablet down on a rock and step away. He walked in a small circle for about a minute, rubbing the back of his neck, before he came back and looked at the screen again. But here is what nobody expected. His higher resolution scan revealed that the 7 figures were not solid stone. They were hollow shells, thin outer casings with empty interiors, like cocoons, like pods. Something had once been alive inside each one, or maybe still was. The shell material itself defied identification. Whatever it was made of should not have survived contact with molten lava. Nothing organic withstands those temperatures. Nothing synthetic should either, not for that duration, not under that pressure. Yet there they were, intact and structurally sound, inside rock that had been liquid fire when the dinosaurs were still dying out. Within 48 hours, government agencies were quietly notified. Encrypted emails, closed-door briefings, and the site Dr. Brennan had been studying her entire career was about to be taken away from her. An environmental agency team arrived within 48 hours and issued a public statement almost immediately. The drone footage was a trick of light reflecting off wet basalt. No chamber existed. No anomalies had been detected. The area was perfectly normal. Everyone could relax. But here is the problem. Their own lead consultant, Doc Brennan herself, the person they had contracted to verify the site, refused to sign that report. She was shown the draft statement, read it twice, and pushed it back across the table without picking up a pen. Colleagues on site say she reviewed the raw sonar data one final time on her laptop, went completely white, closed the screen, and submitted her resignation the following week. Her letter was 4 sentences long. The last one read, "I have seen enough." The agency did not waste time after that. They erected heavy steel barriers and bright yellow warning signs around the entire section of cliff. Official reason: coastal erosion, falling rock hazard. Standard safety closure. If you walked past those barriers today, a park ranger would give you the exact same story without blinking. It is a good cover. Simple, boring, the kind of thing nobody asks follow-up questions about. But everyone who had seen those scans knew exactly why that section of cliff was suddenly off limits. And what happened next confirmed it. Before the research team was formally ordered to leave the area, Dr. Brennan managed to return to the site one more time, 4 days after the original scan. Standard scientific procedure: run a comparative scan, confirm the initial data, document any changes. She expected everything to look identical. She was hoping it would look identical. She wanted to believe the first scan might have been a glitch, an artifact of unusual mineral density, something that would dissolve under a second look. When the new image loaded on her screen, she grabbed the edge of the equipment case to steady herself. One of the figures was gone. Only 6 remained. The stone door had not opened. Not once. Ciaran Doyle, sensing the significance of his footage from the very beginning, had mounted a motion-activated camera aimed directly at the rock face the day after his original recording. It ran continuously, 24 hours a day, for all 4 days. The footage showed 0 movement on the exterior. Not a tremor, not a vibration. The door stayed sealed the entire time. Yet inside that locked chamber, one figure over 7 feet tall had simply vanished. No dust, no debris, no crack, no tunnel, no displacement in the surrounding stone, no trace of any kind. It was as if it had walked straight through solid rock and disappeared into the earth itself. The team checked every inch of the chamber walls on the scan. No exit, no second secondary passage, no fracture line, nothing. And the remaining 6 had not reacted. They did not scatter. They did not shift into a different pattern or move away from the spot where the 7th had been standing. They just kept standing there in the darkness, facing the door, as if the 7th leaving was expected, as if it was simply the first one to go. This is where Dr. Nam Callahan entered the picture. A thermal imaging specialist from University College Dublin, Callahan had been brought in to check for volcanic heat sources or underground water that might explain the anomalous readings. Straightforward diagnostic work. She had done this kind of survey dozens of times on geothermal sites across Iceland and the Azores. She expected to find a hot spring, a magma pocket, maybe a buried water channel generating residual warmth. Something boring, something explainable. It was a freezing March morning. Air temperature 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The cliff face rock equally cold, standard Irish coast weather. Nothing unusual. Then, she aimed her thermal camera at the chamber location. The screen flooded orange and red. Inside that sealed room, the 6 remaining figures were radiating heat at 99 degrees Fahrenheit. 99 degrees. That is not close to human body temperature. That is human body temperature. The exact internal core reading of a healthy living person. There is no mechanism in geology or thermodynamics that explains how anything stays that warm inside coldstone for even a century, let alone millions of years. Heat dissipates. Always, it radiates outward and fades. That is not a theory. That is a fundamental law of physics. Sealed inside freezing basalt, surrounded by Atlantic Ocean air. Anything warm should have reached equilibrium with the surrounding rock in a matter of days, not millions of years. Days. Callahan recalibrated her equipment, swapped the batteries, repositioned the camera, ran the scan from 3 different angles. Every time, 99 degrees. Steady, unmistakable. She even borrowed a second thermal unit from Gallagher's kit and ran the whole sequence again with completely different hardware. Same result. She turned to her colleagues and asked, dead serious, if they were playing a prank on her. When she saw their faces, pale, tight-lipped, nobody laughing, she realized they were not. She packed her gear into her car without saying another word and did not respond to a single email or phone call for 3 weeks. When she finally did reply, it was a single line, "I need more time to process what I saw." But here is what nobody expected next. The team had also installed vibration sensors along the rock face to listen for subsurface movement. What those sensors picked up may be the most disturbing detail in this entire story. A rhythmic pulse, repeating every 4.7 seconds. Consistent, steady, never varying. One of the senior researchers chose his words very carefully when he admitted on record that the pattern was indistinguishable from a slow heartbeat. The thermal readings were not stable either. They would spike above 100 degrees with no external trigger, then settle back down to 99. The fluctuations did not match the tides, did not match the weather, did not match any known geological cycle. The team ran correlations against barometric pressure, lunar phases, seismic activity across the North Atlantic. Nothing matched. The heat was behaving independently. Autonomously, whatever was generating it was coming from inside those hollow shells. And every 72 hours, when the team ran a fresh scan, the situation got worse. The 6 remaining figures were changing positions. Not dramatically, a few inches at a time, barely perceptible between individual scans, but consistently and directionally, always moving in the same direction. They were no longer in that precise military formation. They had clustered together and were shifting steadily toward the sealed stone door, slowly, deliberately, like something waking from a very long sleep and deciding it was finally time to leave. The researchers overlaid the positional data from every 72-hour scan onto a single composite image. When they saw the trajectory mapped out, 6 data points showing a clear, unbroken path toward the exit, nobody in the room said anything for a long time. Think about what that actually means. These things have been locked inside volcanic rock since before mammals existed. They have outlived every species, every civilization, every empire that ever rose and fell on the surface above them. For tens of millions of years, they did not move. They stayed in formation, patient, still. And now, right now in our lifetime, they are heading for the door. Meanwhile, over 1 million tourists visit the Giant's Causeway every single year. Families walk across those black stones with their children. They take selfies. They listen to guides talk about Finn McCool. They have absolutely no idea what is really happening behind that cliff face. No idea that just 40 feet behind the rock, 6 entities are radiating body heat into cold stone and inching toward a door that has already opened once. Dr. Brennan, despite her resignation, attempted to go public. She spent months compiling everything: the thermal data, the heartbeat patterns, the positional shifts, the shell composition analysis. She wrote a formal paper, had it peer-reviewed by 2 trusted colleagues who confirmed her methodology was sound, and submitted it to Ireland's Geological Review Board. She We believed the public deserved to know what was inside their most famous national landmark. The board rejected it immediately. Faulty equipment, flawed methodology, insufficient evidence. Case closed. And then something remarkable happened. A colleague who sits on that board contacted her privately afterward, off the record from a burner phone. He told her the real reason had nothing to do with her science. Nobody wanted to deal with the chaos it would create. If the public learned that biological heat signatures and rhythmic pulses had been detected inside ancient basalt, it would crack the foundation of everything we think we know about the history of life on Earth. Every textbook rewritten, every timeline shattered, every assumption about when intelligence first appeared on this planet thrown out entirely. In April, all monitoring equipment was quietly removed from the site. The researchers were told in plain terms, stay silent or your careers are finished. No publications, no interviews, no social media, nothing, but they could not destroy all of it. The evidence still exists. Ciaran Doyle still has his original drone footage on 3 hard drives stored in separate locations across Dublin. He checks them every week to make sure the files have not been corrupted or remotely wiped. He told a close friend that he sleeps differently now, lighter, more alert, like something in his brain shifted the night he watched that stone move and never fully shifted back. The researchers who worked the site, Brennan, Gallagher, Callahan, and at least 2 other team members, kept personal copies of everything. Sonar data, thermal logs, vibration recordings, positional scans, time-stamped photographs of every equipment readout. All of it saved on encrypted drives, stored where no agency can reach without a warrant. The last scan before the equipment was pulled showed the 6 figures still moving, still pulsing, still warm. The one closest to the door was only a few feet from the stone entrance, and its rhythmic heartbeat was measurably stronger than it had been the week before. Getting louder, getting faster, as if it could sense exactly how close it was to the way out. But the question that keeps every single one of these researchers awake at night is not about the 6 that are still inside. It is about the one that already left. When they first scanned that chamber, there were 7 figures. Now there are 6. One is gone. It did not break through the stone. It did not open the door. It did not leave a tunnel, a crack, a scratch, or a single grain of displaced dust. It simply was not there anymore. So where is it now? Somewhere beneath the Atlantic, drifting through cave systems that stretch for miles under the Irish seabed, hidden in an unexplored cavern along the coast, buried inside another cliff face that nobody has thought to scan, or somewhere else entirely, beneath a city, inside a mountain, moving through spaces we have never thought to look. And the remaining 6 did not flinch when the 7th disappeared. They did not scatter or rearrange. They just kept moving toward the door, patiently, steadily, as if the departure was expected, as if it was simply the first one to leave, as if they are waiting their turn. We have spent our entire existence believing we were the first intelligent things to walk this planet. These figures say otherwise. Something was here long before us, sealed in stone, radiating warmth, pulsing with a rhythm that sounds exactly like breathing, and it has been waiting inside that rock while every civilization we have ever built rose and fell on the surface above it. Dr. Brennan said something recently, off the record, to one of the few people she still trusts. She said, "We treat ancient history like something dead, something we dig up and put behind glass. But what if it is not dead? What if it has just been sleeping? And what if it is finally waking up?" Right now, 6 figures stand facing a stone door inside the cliffs at the Giant's Causeway. Their heartbeats are getting stronger. Their heat signatures are climbing. They are inches from the exit. And the 7th is already out there somewhere, moving through a world that does not know it exists. Do you think those 6 figures are still behind that door? Or have more already gotten out? Tell me what you think in the comments below. And if you want to know the moment new evidence surfaces on this story, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because this one is far from over.